I knew something was different the moment she said my name. Not the way she usually did, brisk, composed, and clipped like every syllable came with a deadline. This time, it was softer. Not an invitation, not exactly. More like she'd already made a decision and was checking if I'd follow. Ms. Hartley stood at the edge of my desk with a folder pressed against her ribs. 45, maybe 46, always immaculate. The kind of woman who never let a crease stay in her clothes or a pause hang in the air. Tonight, though, her hair, dark with a few strands of silver she never bothered to hide, wasn't pinned back the way it usually was. It fell to her shoulders like she'd stopped caring halfway through fixing it. "I'll need you to stay late," she said, not meeting my eyes right away. I nodded before thinking it through. "Sure." "Overtime?" The corner of her mouth moved, something between a smirk and a breath she didn't allow out. "Something like that." The office was nearly empty by then. Just the hum of the vents and the glow of monitors left on sleep mode. She walked ahead of me down the hall, heels slow against the tile. Not rushed. Not rehearsed. Like this was the part of the evening she hadn't scheduled. When I reached her glass-walled office, she didn't immediately sit at her desk. She leaned against it instead, arms folded on the folder she'd brought. I tried not to stare at her hands, how clean and feminine they looked against the dark fabric of her sleeves. No rings. Just a simple watch and a faint line where jewelry used to be. "You've been here 6 months now," she said. Her tone was steady, but something about it made me stand straighter. "You work hard. You don't complain. You listen." I didn't know what to say, so I just held her gaze. She didn't look away this time. "I need someone I can rely on," she continued, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Someone who understands discretion." That word sat between us like another body. She stepped closer, not much, just enough that I could catch the faint scent of her perfume. Something warm, like amber and rain on concrete. "I do," I said quietly. Her breath left her in a slow exhale, as if my answer confirmed something she'd already assumed. She set the folder down on the desk and moved to the window, arms folded loosely this time. The city lights reflected across the glass, framing her like a portrait she hadn't meant to pose for. I watched her shoulders rise and fall. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. There was a tension in the room that had nothing to do with deadlines or reports. After a moment, she turned back to me. "Come here." It wasn't a command. It wasn't quite a request either. My heartbeat felt too loud as I crossed the room. She stood close, closer than necessary. Her hand brushed mine when she passed me a document from the folder. A light touch, but intentional. My fingers curled slightly before I could stop them. "You'll review this with me," she said, voice low. "It can't leave this room." I scanned the first page, but I barely registered the words. Her presence blurred the lines. She stepped beside me at her desk, one hand resting on the surface near mine. I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, even without contact. The silence wasn't awkward. It was charged. Every movement felt like a question neither of us dared to voice. She leaned in to point at a section of the page, her shoulder grazing my arm. The touch was light, accidental by anyone else's standards. But she didn't move away immediately. Her breath skimmed the side of my neck for half a second too long. I swallowed. She noticed. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes didn't carry the usual restraint. There was something raw there. Something careful, but no longer hidden. Then, 3 sharp knocks hit the glass door behind us. She didn't turn around. She didn't step back. And neither did I. The knock at the door went unanswered. Whoever it was waited a few seconds, then their footsteps faded back down the hall. Ms. Hartley didn't move, not right away. Her eyes stayed on the paper in front of us, but she wasn't reading anymore. I could tell by the way her fingers had paused on the edge of the page, still, but not relaxed. When she finally stepped back, it was slow, deliberate, like she was forcing space between us she didn't actually want. You can sit, she said, voice quieter than before. She moved around to the other side of the desk, but instead of taking her chair, she leaned against the window ledge, arms folded, ankles crossed. Like sitting would make her too grounded. Too available. I lowered into the chair and tried to focus on the document, but my thoughts drifted. She watched me with the same kind of restraint she used in meetings, measured, unreadable, except for the way her thumb brushed across her opposite wrist. A small, rhythmic motion, almost absent-minded. She'd divorced 8 years ago. That was all I knew. The rest was office rumor, something about her ex leaving, about her throwing herself into work instead of dating again. People liked to speculate, but no one actually knew her well enough to ask. Not really. She broke the silence first. You live alone, don't you? It didn't sound like casual conversation. Her tone made me feel like she already knew the answer. Yeah, I said. Since last year. She nodded slowly, eyes tracking the lines of the file instead of me. I used to think living alone would feel like freedom. A pause. It doesn't. I didn't know how to respond without sounding like I was crossing a line. So I said nothing, and maybe that was the right choice, because she didn't close off. If anything, something in her posture softened. Her gaze flicked to me again, lingering a beat too long. You're very quiet when you're unsure. I almost smiled. And you're not used to people being quiet around you. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in a way that said she heard more than I said. Or maybe she recognized something. She walked back to my side of the desk to point out a section of the report. This time, she didn't keep her distance. The fabric of her sleeve brushed my arm, and she didn't apologize. Her hand rested on the back of my chair, fingers grazing the top edge near my shoulder. The contact was light, barely there, but my skin registered it before my brain did. You're good at reading between the lines, she said, eyes still down. So are you, I said. A faint, humorless smile appeared and disappeared. It's a bad habit. She stepped away, but hesitated halfway. Her eyes met mine, and for a second, neither of us tried to disguise the pull we'd been pretending not to feel. There are rules here, she said quietly. Not a warning, more like a confession. I know. And people talk. They always do. Another silence settled, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was thick, fragile, charged with all the things we didn't name. She reached for the file again, and her hand brushed mine. Not accidental. Not bold. Just, unhidden. I didn't pull away. For the first time that night, she didn't either. Her fingers paused over mine, only a second, maybe 2. But it felt like an answer neither of us had spoken yet. She didn't move her hand right away. Her fingers rested lightly on mine, barely there, but the kind of contact that made everything else in the room fall out of focus. The glow of her desk lamp softened the edges of her features. She didn't look at our hands, only at me, as if waiting for a reason to pull away. Then a vibration broke the moment. Her phone buzzed against the glass table, the sound sharp in the quiet. She drew her hand back quickly, not with panic, but with practiced control. The kind of reaction that came from years of being careful. She checked the screen without picking up the phone. A brief flicker in her eyes said more than she answered out loud. Whoever it was, she didn't intend to reply. You should head home soon, she said, even though she hadn't dismissed me. So should you, I replied. She huffed the smallest breath that almost counted as a laugh. That's not how this job works. She closed the file slowly, fingers pressing the cover flat. The distance she put between us was small, but intentional. Not cold. Not rejection. Just survival. Does anyone know you're still here? I asked. She understood what I really meant. They assume I live here, she said. Most days they're not wrong. My gaze dropped to the faint tiredness beneath her eyes, the kind that doesn't come from lack of sleep, just years of holding everything in place. She seemed to notice me noticing. Her shoulders straightened, her expression hardening just enough to reassemble the version of herself people were used to. But it didn't stick. She glanced at the door, then back at me. Lock it. I hesitated only long enough to make sure she was serious. When I turned the latch, the soft click sounded louder than it should have. She watched me do it, then pretended she wasn't watching. She walked to the window again, arms crossed, not defensively, but to keep from reaching for something she shouldn't. The city lights reflected in the glass, throwing a soft halo around her silhouette. For a moment, she looked far away. Not lost, just somewhere she rarely let herself go. You ever think about leaving? I asked. She didn't turn. Every day. Why don't you? A pause. Because the only thing worse than staying, she said, is starting over. I didn't push. I didn't pretend to know what she meant. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable, but it was honest. She finally turned around, leaning back against the window ledge. You're different from the others. I didn't know whether to take that as a warning, a compliment, or a problem. Before I could answer, footsteps echoed faintly down the hallway. We both froze. The shadows under the door shifted, someone walking past. A muffled voice followed, paired with another set of steps. They slowed near her office. She instinctively stepped closer to me, closing the space between us without touching. The voices paused. My heartbeat did not. She placed a hand on my arm, not pulling me, not pushing me, just anchoring me still. Through the glass, the silhouettes moved on. The hallway quieted again. Her hand stayed a second longer than necessary. They shouldn't see you in here this late, she said softly. That why you locked the door? I asked. Her eyes lifted to mine, and she didn't deny it. She took a breath, slow and measured, like she was deciding whether to step closer or send me home. Instead, she reached past me to gather the remaining papers from the desk. The motion brought her shoulder almost against my chest, the soft brush of fabric grazing fabric. She paused. Didn't step back. I could feel the faint warmth of her body, close enough that one wrong breath would close the distance entirely. Her hair, loosened from earlier, barely touched my chin when she tilted her head. This can't, she started, then stopped. She didn't back away. People would assume, they already do, I said. Her eyes searched mine then, not for reassurance, but for honesty. A soft chime broke the air, a message on my phone this time. I pulled it from my pocket, and the screen lit my hand. A friend asking if I was still alive at work. She watched the notification disappear, then looked away first. Not because she wanted to end the moment, but because staying in it was harder. I shouldn't be alone with you like this, she said quietly. You asked me to stay. I know. She set the papers down again without arranging them. Her fingers pressed into the edge of the desk, knuckles faintly tense. A beat passed. Another. Then she spoke without looking up. Do you regret it? I didn't answer immediately. I stepped closer, not touching, just near enough that she felt the answer before I spoke. No, her breath hitched, so slight I might have imagined it. She didn't move away this time. And neither did I. She didn't step back. Her eyes flicked to the door once more, but not out of fear, out of calculation. The silence between us was too full now, too alive to ignore. She stood still, breath measured but not steady, and something in her composure finally gave way. You don't understand what this could cost, she said, not as a warning, but as a confession. You do, I replied. She let out a quiet exhale, almost a laugh, almost a plea. You think this is simple. I don't think any of this is simple, I said. But I'm still here. She closed her eyes for a second, just long enough to betray the war she was fighting with herself. When she opened them again, something raw flickered through. Do you know what they'd say about me? Her voice wasn't raised, but it cut through the room. They'd think I was desperate. That I went looking for someone younger to make myself feel. She stopped, jaw flexing. I don't get to make mistakes quietly. I didn't interrupt. She wasn't finished. And you, her gaze landed on me like a touch. They'd call you reckless. They'd say you only wanted one thing. That you didn't know better. They'd be wrong, I said. She stepped closer, but her body was tense, like she was walking a line she'd drawn herself. Would they? I didn't answer with words. I let the space close until I could feel the warmth from her skin, the soft scent of her perfume threading into the air again. Her breathing changed, shallower, quiet, not controlled anymore. She tried to turn away, but I reached out, fingers brushing lightly against her wrist. Just enough to stop her from leaving the moment entirely. Look at me, I said. Slowly, too slowly, she did. The world outside the glass walls didn't exist anymore. The desk, the files, the dim lights humming in the ceiling, all of it faded beneath the gravity between us. I don't want this, she whispered. But you do? My voice was low, barely more than breath. She didn't answer. Her hand lifted, hesitant at first, then found my collarbone, fingertips hovering before settling lightly against my shirt. The slightest touch, but it sent heat down my spine. She didn't push me away. She held me there. I should tell you to leave, she said, though her hand didn't move. Then tell me. She didn't. The silence felt like it might fracture into something neither of us could take back. Her thumb traced an unconscious line across the fabric, and my pulse jumped to meet it. She looked at my mouth, then away. Then back again. I lifted a hand, slow enough to stop if she wanted. I touched a loose strand of her hair, brushing it back behind her ear. My fingers barely grazed her cheek, but her breath caught like I'd crossed a threshold we could never redraw. Her eyes were darker now. Not with anger. Not with fear. With decision. I haven't wanted someone, she stopped, words unraveling. Not like this. Not in years. The admission hung there, unguarded, irreversible. I took another half step forward, and her body didn't retreat. She backed into the window ledge, hands bracing behind her, as if she needed something solid to keep her from giving in. Her voice dropped, barely audible. If you don't walk away right now, I won't stop you next time. My heart pounded hard enough that I knew she could feel it if I touched her. I'm not walking away, I said. The air thickened. She stared at me, at my mouth, at my hands, at the space that wasn't space anymore. Then, footsteps again. Closer. Stopping outside the door. A shadow moved behind the glass. She didn't move. Neither did I. Her voice, almost a breath, don't say anything. But she didn't let go of my shirt. The shadow outside her door didn't move for a full 5 seconds. 5 seconds where neither of us breathed. Then came the knock, light, uncertain, like whoever stood there wasn't sure they should be. Ms. Hartley's hand finally released my shirt, but only to straighten it as she stepped past me. She didn't open the door right away. Instead, she smoothed her blouse, brushed a hand through her hair, and swallowed whatever expression had almost surfaced a moment ago. When she finally unlocked it and pulled it open just a few inches, her voice was steady again. Yes? It was Daniel, from accounting. Mid-30s, awkward shoulders, always too apologetic. He blinked when he saw her, like he hadn't expected her face so close. Sorry, he said, glancing briefly past her and catching sight of me behind her desk. His eyes flickered, curiosity first, then something heavier. I didn't know you were still in. Her tone didn't waver. Is something wrong? He hesitated, then shifted his weight. No, someone from upstairs said your car was still in the lot. They were asking if you'd gone home with someone else. The words hit harder than they should have. Her posture didn't change, but her hand tightened slightly on the door. With someone else? She repeated, measured. He nodded quickly. Apparently one of the partners was heading out and saw your office light on earlier with, his gaze flicked to me again, then away just as fast. I didn't say anything. Just thought you should know. For a moment, the silence tasted different. Not the silence we'd built. A new one, colder, thinner, edged with exposure. Thank you, she said. Good night. Daniel gave me one more look he tried to disguise as casual, then left. She closed the door slowly. Locked it again. When she turned back to me, something in her composure was cracked, but not gone. She stepped away from the door like she was moving through deeper water than before. So they're already talking, I said quietly. She didn't answer. She leaned back against the desk, palms pressing into the surface behind her. For the first time tonight, she looked cornered. Not by me. By everything around us. I moved closer, but not enough to crowd her. Her eyes dropped to my hands, then to the floor. When were you going to tell me? I asked. Tell you what? That you weren't the only one people were watching. She exhaled, slow and thin. It doesn't matter what's true. It matters what it looks like. I didn't disagree. But I didn't back away either. She pushed off the desk and stepped toward me, close enough that the air shifted between us. Her voice, when it came, was lower. I wasn't lying when I said I don't get to make mistakes quietly. And I'm not one of them, I said. Something flickered in her eyes, anger, maybe, or fear dressed as anger. But she didn't deny it. Even if this ends before it begins, she said, I'll be the one they blame. I took another step. She didn't move. Then don't let it end. Her breath caught, not loudly, but enough that I felt it. She stood so close our hands almost touched again. Her fingers twitched once before she stilled them. Her voice came out quieter, the closest thing to unguarded I'd heard. If I don't stop this now, I won't. My chest tightened in a way that felt like both danger and relief. I didn't reach for her. But I didn't step back. And this time, neither did she. She didn't move when I stepped closer, didn't retreat, didn't try to hide the way her breath caught. The space between us had never felt smaller. The office light behind her threw a soft outline around her shoulders, and for a second, she looked like she was considering running. Not out the door, just back into the safety of pretending. But she didn't. I should tell you to leave, she said, voice barely above a whisper. You won't. Her eyes lifted to mine then, slow and wary. Her chin tilted up just enough for me to see the shift in her expression, less guarded now, more real. The woman who had spent years mastering control was losing ground, and not because she was careless. Because she was tired of pretending she didn't feel this. You don't understand what this could cost, she said. I do. No. You're young enough to survive a mistake like this. I took another step. We were inches apart now. I could see the faint rise and fall of her chest, the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers curled against the edge of the desk behind her as if to anchor herself. And you're old enough to know when something matters, I said quietly. She looked away then, but not far, just to my mouth, then to my collar, then back to my eyes. Her voice softened, frayed at the edges. You think this is simple. That wanting is enough. It's not simple, I said. It's honest. The silence wrapped around us again, heavy, charged, not asking permission from either of us. She didn't step back when I raised my hand. I didn't touch her, just hovered near the side of her face, close enough to feel the warmth of her skin, close enough that she had every second to stop me. She didn't. Her eyes fluttered once when I brushed a stray piece of hair from her cheek. My fingers didn't linger, but something in her posture changed, as if the effort of restraint had finally begun to tremble. You should walk away, she whispered. I'm not going to. She didn't tell me to stop. She didn't move at all. Her breath came a little slower now, as though she was fighting her own pulse. If I let this happen, she began. This is already happening, I said. A faint, helpless sound escaped her, too soft to be called a laugh, too raw to be anything but truth. She closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, the war in them was losing to something she'd held back far too long. "You don't get to unknow this," she said. "I don't want to." She exhaled, the kind of breath people take when they finally stop lying to themselves. The distance between us was nothing now, half a step, one heartbeat, a single decision. "I'm not pretending anymore," she said. My hand found hers, not forceful, not rushed, just there. Her fingers hesitated only a second before curling into mine. No one spoke after that. She didn't push me away. I didn't let go. And whatever this was, whatever it might cost, we both knew we had already chosen it. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Her hand stayed in mine, not tense anymore, just warm, present, certain in a way words couldn't quite reach. The office around us felt different now, as if the walls had agreed to hold our secret a little longer. The world outside hadn't changed, but something between us had shifted in a way that couldn't be undone. She was the first to move, but not by pulling away. She stepped past me slowly, still holding my hand, and crossed to turn off the overhead light. Only the lamp by the bookshelf stayed on, casting the room in a softer glow that made every corner feel gentler, less exposed. When she came back toward me, she didn't rush. She stood close, almost touching, but not quite, and looked up at me with an expression I hadn't seen on her face before. Not guarded. Not rehearsed. Just honest, and maybe a little afraid. "I've spent so long telling myself I don't get to want something like this," she said quietly. "That I'm past the point where it's allowed." "You're not past anything," I said. "You're just used to being alone." Her gaze flickered, and for a second, I thought she might look away again. But she didn't. She let me see the truth she'd kept locked behind so much restraint, how much effort it had taken her to stay untouched by what she felt. "And you," she said, almost gently, "don't seem nearly as afraid of the fallout as you should be." "I'm not pretending it won't be messy," I said. "I'm just saying it's worth it." Her breathing steadied, slower now, though her eyes still carried the echo of hesitation. I stepped forward this time, leaving no space between us. She didn't flinch. The front of her body rested lightly against mine, and that alone felt like something earned. I lifted my hand and touched her face, brushing my thumb along her cheekbone. She closed her eyes at the contact, just for a second, but long enough to let me feel how deeply she'd needed it. "I don't want to hide from this anymore," I said, voice low. "Not from you." She opened her eyes again, and something softened completely. "No more calculation. No more running." "You really mean that," she murmured. "I wouldn't still be here if I didn't." She let out a breath that sounded like release, like setting down a weight she'd carried alone for years. Her forehead leaned gently against mine, and we stood there breathing the same air, sharing the same silence without any need to fill it. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet. It was more than that, an unspoken promise, shaped in closeness and quiet. "I don't know what happens next," she said. "We figure it out," I answered. "Together." Her fingers slipped between mine again, more certain this time. I felt her shoulders relax, felt the warmth of her body ease into mine instead of holding back. "Stay," she whispered. Just that one word, but it was the clearest choice either of us had made all night. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. She rested her head lightly against my chest, and I wrapped an arm around her waist, holding her without urgency. We didn't need anything more than that, no rushed declarations, no dramatic promises. Just warmth. Just closeness. Just the quiet relief of finally being seen and wanted in return. Minutes passed without either of us moving. Her hand traced a slow line along my forearm, and I pressed a soft kiss to the top of her head, not claiming anything, just acknowledging what was already ours. When she finally looked up at me again, her eyes weren't asking permission or seeking escape. They were sure. Whatever waited outside that office, whispers, judgment, risk, we'd face it side by side. Not in theory, not in secret. In choice. Together.